Hello everyone, my name is Kyeisha Laurence. I'm very excited to be coming to you today with civil society to talk about how we can become a better ancestor by learning how to learn. My name is Kyeisha Laurence. I'm from St. Martin. I left the island when I was 14 to come to the States, where I completed high school, undergraduate, and I'm now in medical school as well as getting a master's in public policy at Harvard University. Today I'm excited to talk to you about how we can better learn in order to be better ancestors. Why does learning make us better ancestors? I think a lot of us grew up hearing stories from our grandparents or great-grandparents about how much they had to go through in order to get an education. At least I know those are the kind of stories that I grew up with and moved me. Despite having limited access to education, my great-grandparents were legacies. They did so much on the island and made such a great impact, and I grew up knowing that the education that I had was a privilege, even more than they had, and so I had no excuse but to achieve greatness and also make an impact. This is why today I'm going to be talking about how we can best learn to put our best foot forward when it comes to our academics. But let's be honest, learning is not always straightforward, and we've all had those moments where you're reading and reading and reading and trying to understand something and you simply do not get it, and that's probably one of the most frustrating experiences that they are. That's why today I'm going to be breaking down specific tips to help you succeed in your classes. These are tips and advice that I've learned from high school, that I use through college, that I even use in medical school, and so I hope that they'll be helpful to you. So let's get started. The first thing we need to do is have the right mindset. The mindset you have is just as important as what you are studying or how you are studying it. There's a saying that my great-grandfather always used to say that still sticks to me to this day. He would say that if you aim for 100, you're going to get a 90. You need to aim for 110. Now, hearing that might sound a little daunting, or thinking that he was saying that you have to, be perfect or get, above and 100% grades, and how is that possible? But really what this saying meant is that it's not about the grades at all. If you're simply aiming to do well in the class, then you're going to do well. A 90 is still an A. That's awesome. You won't even care about the other 10%. Instead, by saying that you need to aim for 110%, it's really about fully understanding the material for you and your learning and your understanding. This is a mindset I've taken throughout my academics. And when I'm learning material, I truly leave no stone uncovered for me to make sure I understand. With that mindset, I actually do end up getting A's because I'm learning all the materials so deeply. But it really changes the perspective of just being in school to get a letter grade or a number grade, and instead it's about learning for yourself. My next tip is that you need to figure out how you best learn. Now, the same way that we're all individuals and you have to learn what, clothes look best on you, what food you like best, it's the same with learning. It's not a one shoe fits all scenario. People may be more visual learners, more auditory learners. There are actually many different ways that we all learn. And so the first thing you want to do is take some time going online. You can take different surveys, watch a couple YouTube videos, and figure out if there's a learning style that best fits you. I know for me, I really am a big mix of different things. I especially liked videos, and I leaned on videos a lot, especially in my STEM courses like chemistry and biochemistry. A video for me combined both the visual and auditory to really help me learn the material in a different way than reading it from a book. So finding out how you learn is the best first step in order to be successful. Tip number 3 is that when you're studying, you should practice active studying instead of passive studying. Now, what's the difference? Passive studying is something like rereading over your notes, using highlighters, which I love me some highlighters, but it's passive, simply underlining things and just really not engaging thoroughly with the information. Versus active studying means that you're actually using your brain to recall information, to redigest information and understand it more deeply. Here are some examples. An active form of studying includes reading your notes and turning them into flashcards. It also is my favorite tip that I use in all of my classes, which is making my own practice tests. The process of making your own practice test is such a great way to learn. It requires you to go through the material and think about how the material links together that could be asked in a question from your teacher. And even just that process is a great way of consolidating information, making links between different topics, and turning it into a question format. So after I made the process of making my own practice tests, then I would do those practice tests. And this was great because it was training my brain in active recall. It's turning photosynthesis is done in the chloroplast of the cell into what is photosynthesis? Where is it done in the cell? Recoding that information in my brain. So I'm now focused on how do I recall it. This is so key because there's so many times where you might think that you know something until you're asked it and realize you actually don't know it, or maybe you know it wrong, or you don't know how to explain it in your own words. And so active studying with practice tests is one of my top tips for your classes. My next tip is similar to this. Practice problems are key, especially for STEM classes like science and mathematics. You want to be able to get your hand on as many practice problems as possible, whether this is the back of your textbook or asking your teacher for past exams or past questions. This is a great way to study. When you're doing practice questions, it's actually really important that you do them in the same setting as it would be in the real test. So let me explain. For example, you want to make sure that you remove all distractions. Set a timer for the amount of time that the test actually is and take it within that allotted amount of time. If you're especially an anxious test taker, you might even want to take it in a room that's similar to your actual test. This is important because it actually trains your brain to be under the circumstances of the test. You may be going through practice questions and understanding things, but then you're not good at your time management. And so on the actual exam, you can't perform well. Doing your practice test in exam-like conditions helps to circumvent this. So I hope that that's a tip that you'll try as well. The next thing that we need to do is you need to plan like a pro. One of my favorite things that I would do as well is make study plans. This means I would go through everything that was covered in the course, make a full list of all of the different topics, and then I would take my Google Calendar, my planner, and basically plug in the times that I would review every single topic. This was important for me, especially in college where I'm taking high-level classes all together in one semester. I had to break down and create a plan in order to get to the success that I wanted. So how can you do this? You should be, before the test, you should be making a study plan. What units are covered on this test? Which units are the hardest for me? Those I need to spend more time reviewing. Then create that plan for yourself. On Saturday, I'm going to review XYZ. Sunday, I'm going to review this. The test is on Monday. Having a plan is a key step to success. Along with that, it is so important that you give all of your subjects your love. See, for me, being able to get straight A's and be a 4.0 student meant that every single subject I aced. That means that I did not ever allow myself to feel too comfortable in a certain topic. This is especially important because I think sometimes when people feel that they're very smart or academically gifted, they think they don't have to try. I actually do not agree with that at all. Even if a subject like, let's say, English is easy to you, you should still make sure that you're reviewing the topics and that you're giving it time and attention. Because if not, you can make some silly mistakes and all of a sudden the class that was easy, you actually have the lower grade in, and your harder classes that you put all your energy into, you have higher grades. And so similar to the first part about our mindset, we're learning because we love to learn, because we want to learn, and it's a privilege to learn. And so that should be applying to all of our subjects. Now, I know this has been a lot, so let's just take a deep breath. And my next tip is to remind you to take care of your brain. In order to learn well, you need to also be taking care of yourself. One thing that I would always say is that even though I took all these high advanced classes, that I'm in medical school, and I'm getting another degree now on top of my medical degree, doing these really hard things, I did not allow my self-care to go on the wayside. This is especially important when it comes to sleep. And so I would never pull all-nighters. Instead, I would get, the same amount of sleep, let's say 6-7 hours, but I'd actually wake up early in the morning where my brain is now awake and I'm alert. And that's when I would review material instead of staying up till 2 and 3 a.m. It was so important for me to have routines where I was taking care of myself. Going to the gym often, having good food, healthy food, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and also just taking breaks where I could just read a book, go on a walk, just make sure that I was giving myself and my brain space. So make sure you're taking care of yourself because it's really a key part of learning. One way that you can learn and take breaks is using the Pomodoro method. This method is awesome, and if you haven't tried it yet, I definitely recommend it. It's a process in which you do focused work, and then you have a set amount of time for break and then back to work. I usually would do 50 minutes of work, 10-minute breaks, or you can also do 30 minutes of work and 5-minute breaks. This is really great. And again, it's a great way to just trick your brain and help train your brain to be able to focus for an allotted amount of time. If you go to study and it's just like, okay, I'm gonna go study this material until I know it, it's gonna be hard to convince yourself to sit there for 3-4 hours. But if you set up your timer, you have your study plan, you have your snacks and all the things that you're taking care of yourself, and then okay, I have to do 30 minutes of focus, 5 minutes of break. I'd open up my phone, I'd scroll on Instagram, I'd take a walk around, I'd call a friend, get some water, and then back to 30 minutes. It actually made it so much easier to spend hours upon hours being productive and learning. And so I really recommend that you try this out. I feel like all of these tips are my top tips, but this is also a really, really important one. Don't be afraid to ask for help. We're not meant to be learning alone. I highly, highly recommend forming study groups and studying with your peers. One thing that you can do is that if you're able to explain a topic to another person, that means that you know the material so well. And so this is a great thing to do with your friends. Also, be sure that you're asking your teacher for help, getting tutoring. All of the resources that are available to you, you should be taking advantage of. I feel like there's this misconception again of like the student who's getting the best grades, they're just smart, they don't have to try. And maybe some students are like that, but that was never me. I was always at office hours. I got tutoring. I was always asking the professor for help. I was at every study group. I'd often have to read material 2-3 times in order to get it right. And so it really took a lot of effort, but that effort paid off in being able to understand. So please do not be afraid to ask for help. It's actually going to help you learn even better. My final tip is that you need to connect everything that you're learning to your why, to your personal reasons and your purpose. For me, I'm in medicine. And so when I was learning different topics, even if it wasn't related to medicine, I would make it connect to something I was interested in. Learning different math equations, I think like, well, maybe I need to learn this math to be able to calculate the right medicine dosage for a patient one day. Just things like that, whether it's, business you're interested in, law, politics, teaching, fitness, as a personal trainer, whatever career that you think you might be interested in, there's ways that you can connect it to the material you're learning. And again, this is just a way to just give yourself some personal stake in what you're learning and see why it is important for you to learn. Remember your purpose. Remember why you're here. What impact do you want to have? Going back to the beginning stories about my great grandparents that have inspired me, I think about the legacy that they have and how I want to continue it, and how my education is a step for me to be able to do that. Who do you want to help? What impact do you want to have? These are things that you can be thinking about. Overall, learning truly can make us better ancestors. So I hope that you found these tips helpful. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me. I'd be happy to talk further. And thank you, Civil Society, for having me do this great video.